Hey everyone, before we dive into today's story, don't forget to comment where you're watching from today. What you're about to witness is a tale about how a legendary basketball player showed that some victories are won not on the court, but in moments of standing up for what's right. The morning started like any other at WKSP Sports Radio in Indianapolis. Blake Summers was doing his usual morning show, his voice carrying across the airwaves with the confident swagger that had made him one of the city's most popular sports personalities. But this ordinary morning was about to become extraordinary, all because of a young basketball fan named Liam Hawkins. Liam had loved basketball for as long as anyone could remember. His room was a shrine to the Indiana Pacers and Boston Celtics, with Larry Bird's posters covering nearly every inch of wall space. At 16, he could recite statistics and plays from games that happened long before he was born, his exceptional memory and passion for the sport turning him into a walking basketball encyclopedia. Sophia Tate watched her son practice free throws in their driveway, the same routine he'd followed every morning for the past 5 years. She'd learned early on that routines helped Liam navigate a world that often felt overwhelming. Basketball wasn't just a sport for him. It was his way of connecting with others, of making sense of a world that sometimes struggled to understand him. That morning, Liam had been particularly excited. The local radio station was hosting a basketball trivia contest, and after months of listening and practicing, he had finally worked up the courage to call in. Sophia had helped him rehearse, watching his confidence grow as he correctly answered question after question. "Mom," he'd said that morning, his voice carrying the precise, careful tone characteristic of his autism. "Did you know Larry Bird once scored 60 points against the Atlanta Hawks?" But the really interesting part is how he did it, his shot selection, his positioning, his timing. It was like a masterclass in basketball efficiency. Blake Summers was taking his third caller of the morning when Liam's call came through. "We've got Liam on line 4, his producer announced. Says he wants to try the Bird Week challenge." What happened next would spark a chain of events that would remind everyone why some legends are about more than just what happens on the basketball court. Liam's voice came through clear and focused, just as he'd practiced. "Hello, Mr. Summers. I'd like to answer the Larry Bird trivia question, please." His tone was formal, measured, each word carefully chosen and delivered with precision. Blake's initial response was professional enough. "All right, kid, here's your shot." In the 1984 NBA Finals against the Lakers, Bird put up amazing numbers in Game 7. "Give me his exact stats, points, rebounds, and assists." "You've got 30 seconds. Larry Bird scored 20 points, had 12 rebounds, and 3 assists, Liam answered without hesitation. But what's really interesting is how he adjusted his shooting stance in the second quarter to compensate for the defensive pressure. You see, the Lakers had been dashed. That's when Blake Summers made a decision that would change his career. Instead of letting Liam finish, he cut him off with a laugh. "Whoa, kid, what's with the robot voice? This is basketball, not a computer science class." The studio went quiet for a moment. In the background, someone could be heard trying to get Blake's attention, but he was on a roll now. "I mean, seriously, folks, are we doing basketball trivia or auditioning for the next AI program? Hey, kid, do you compute baseball stats too?" Sophia, listening from home, felt her heart break as she watched Liam's face crumble. Her son, who had spent weeks building up the courage to call in, who found such joy in sharing his knowledge of the game, stood frozen in their kitchen, the phone still pressed to his ear. What no one knew at that moment was that Jasper Boone, a longtime friend of Larry Bird, was listening to the show while driving to meet the basketball legend for breakfast. His hands tightened on the steering wheel as he heard Blake's mocking tone, heard the confusion and hurt in Liam's voice as the boy tried to continue sharing his basketball knowledge. I just wanted to talk about basketball," Liam said, his voice smaller now. "Larry Bird is my hero because he shows that it's not about what people expect from you, it's about dash." Blake cut him off again. "Listen, Rain Man, maybe stick to watching game films in your room. Leave the real basketball talk to people who can have a normal conversation." Owen Barrett, the station manager, was already moving toward the studio, but the damage was done. Blake had crossed a line, and somewhere across town, a basketball legend was about to remind everyone why respect and kindness matter more than any game statistics. Jasper Boone pulled into the parking lot of the small diner where he was meeting Larry Bird. His hands were shaking slightly as he checked his phone, confirming that someone had already uploaded a clip of the morning show incident. It was spreading across social media, with comments ranging from outrage to heartbreak. Larry Bird was already at their usual table, reading the morning paper. He looked up as Jasper approached, immediately noticing his friend's agitation. "What's got you worked up this early?" he asked, his Indiana drawl as distinctive as ever. And there you have it, friends. Sometimes the biggest moments start in the smallest ways. A phone call, a cruel joke, a chance to stand up for what's right. Have you ever witnessed someone being mocked for being different? How did you respond? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Stay tuned, because what happens next will remind us all that true legends aren't just made by what they achieve on the court, but by how they defend those who need defending. Sometimes the most important assists in life have nothing to do with basketball. The small diner where Larry Bird had been having breakfast with friends for years fell silent as Jasper Boone played the radio clip on his phone. The basketball legend's expression remained unchanged, but those who knew him well recognized the subtle tightening of his jaw, the way his eyes narrowed slightly, signs that the famously competitive athlete was about to take on a different kind of challenge. Back at home, Sophia Tate was trying to comfort her son. Liam had retreated to his room, surrounded by his beloved basketball memorabilia, but for the first time, these treasured items seemed to offer little comfort. His usual morning routine had been disrupted, and the carefully constructed world where basketball made everything make sense had been shaken. "He said I wasn't normal," Liam repeated, his voice maintaining that precise, measured tone even in distress. "But Larry Bird once said that normal is just what people who can't do extraordinary things call themselves." He paused, looking at his favorite poster of Bird making a legendary three-point shot. "Did I do something wrong, Mom?" Owen Barrett, the station manager, had already called an emergency meeting. Blake Summers sat in the conference room, defensive but beginning to realize the gravity of his actions as social media exploded with reactions to his morning show segment. "It was just a joke," Blake insisted, scrolling through the growing backlash on his phone. "I mean, the kid was talking like a computer. What was I supposed to do?" That's when Larry Bird made his first move. Without fanfare or announcement, he picked up his phone and dialed a number he rarely used, the direct line to the sports radio station where he occasionally gave interviews. The receptionist almost dropped her coffee when she heard his distinctive voice. "This is Larry Bird. Get me Owen Barrett. Now." The station manager was still in the middle of reprimanding Blake when his assistant burst into the conference room, face flushed with excitement and anxiety. "Mr. Barrett, Larry Bird is on line 1. He says it's about this morning's show." The room fell silent. Blake's face went pale. Everyone in Indiana basketball knew that tone in Larry Bird's voice. It was the same one he used before taking over a crucial game, the calm before the storm. "Mr. Bird," Owen began, his voice professionally steady despite his nervousness. "What can we do for you this morning?" Larry's response was characteristic, direct, uncompromising, and focused on action rather than words. "I want to go on air. Right now. And I want to talk to Blake Summers about respect, about basketball, and about a young fan who knows more about the game than most professionals I've met." While the station scrambled to prepare for an unprecedented live appearance by Larry Bird, Jasper Boone was already making calls. Within an hour, he had tracked down Sophia Tate's contact information through mutual connections in the basketball community. Sophia was helping Liam try to return to his normal routine when her phone rang. The voice on the other end made her sit down abruptly. "Mrs. Tate? This is Jasper Boone, and I'm here with Larry Bird. We heard what happened this morning, and Larry would like to speak with Liam." In his room, Liam was doing what he always did when overwhelmed, reciting basketball statistics, finding comfort in the precise numbers and undeniable facts. Larry Bird, 1984-85 season, 28.7 points per game, 10.5 rebounds, 6.6 assists. Field goal percentage, 52.2. Free throw percentage, 88.2. "Liam," his mother called softly from the doorway, her voice trembling with emotion. "There's someone on the phone who wants to talk to you about those statistics." Meanwhile, Blake Summers was being prepped for what his producer called the most important interview of your career. The usual swagger was gone, replaced by a nervous energy as he realized he was about to face one of basketball's greatest legends, and not for a friendly chat about the good old days. Larry Bird had insisted on doing the interview live. Some lessons, he told Owen Barrett, need to be learned in real time. And some apologies need to be heard by everyone who heard the original mistake. The station's regular programming was interrupted at 10 a.m. The familiar jingle played, but instead of Blake's usual confident introduction, there was a moment of tense silence before Larry Bird's voice filled the airwaves. This is Larry Bird, and I'm here to talk about basketball, about respect, and about a young fan named Liam who knows this game better than most people who get paid to talk about it. The entire city seemed to pause. In homes, offices, and cars, people turned up their radios. Larry Bird giving an unscheduled live interview was unprecedented. Larry Bird calling out a radio host was unheard of. "Blake," Larry continued, his Indiana drawl carrying the weight of authority earned through years of excellence. "You're sitting across from me now. Let's talk about what happened this morning, and why understanding basketball means understanding the people who love it." Blake shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Mr. Bird, I was just trying to keep the show entertaining. I didn't mean dash." "Let me tell you about entertaining," Larry cut in. "Entertaining is watching someone who loves this game break down plays that happened before they were born. Entertaining is hearing the pure joy in someone's voice when they talk about basketball. What's not entertaining is mocking someone because they express that joy differently than you do." The studio was absolutely still as Larry continued. "You know what I heard in that clip? I heard a young man who understands this game at a level most people never will. He wasn't just reciting stats. He was seeing patterns, understanding strategies, appreciating the subtle details that make basketball beautiful." In their kitchen, Liam and Sophia sat transfixed, listening to Larry Bird defend not just Liam, but everyone who had ever been mocked for being different. "You want to know what makes basketball great?" Larry asked. "It's not just the athletes or the scores. It's the way it brings people together, the way it gives people a language to connect with each other. When you mock someone for speaking that language in their own way, you're disrespecting the game itself." Blake tried to interject, to offer an explanation, but Larry wasn't finished. "I've played against some of the greatest players in history. You know what they all had in common? Respect. Respect for the game, respect for their opponents, respect for the fans. Because at its heart, basketball is about bringing out the best in people, all people." The interview continued for 30 minutes, but it wasn't just about confronting Blake's behavior. Larry turned it into a masterclass on respect, on understanding, and on the true spirit of basketball. He shared stories of unlikely heroes, of players who overcame prejudice and doubt, of moments when the game transcended sport to become a vehicle for change. And there you have it, friends. Sometimes the greatest displays of strength have nothing to do with physical prowess. Have you ever witnessed someone stand up for what's right, even when it wasn't easy? Share your stories in the comments below. Stay tuned, because this story isn't just about a legendary basketball player defending a young fan. It's about reminding us all that true greatness is measured not by how we treat those who can help us, but by how we treat those who need our help. What happened in the hours following Larry Bird's live radio intervention would prove that sometimes the most important moments in sports happen far from any court or arena. The story that began with mockery was about to transform into something that would remind everyone why basketball, at its best, is about more than just the game. The phone lines at WKSP Sports Radio were lighting up like a Christmas tree. Listeners weren't just calling to comment on Larry Bird's appearance. They were sharing their own stories. Parents of children with autism, basketball fans who'd felt excluded, people who'd faced similar mockery, all finding their voices. Blake Summers sat in his office after the interview, his usual confidence replaced by genuine reflection. Larry Bird's words had struck deeper than any criticism he'd faced in his career. It wasn't just about what he'd said to Liam, it was about what his words represented, about the responsibility that came with having a platform. Owen Barrett was dealing with a different kind of flood, requests from national media outlets wanting to pick up the story. But what caught his attention most was an email from a group of autism advocacy organizations, all highlighting how this moment could be turned into something bigger than a single incident. Meanwhile, at the Tate household, something remarkable was happening. Liam, who had been retreating into his statistics and routines, was gradually emerging from his shell. Larry Bird's defense of him had done more than just right or wrong. It had validated his way of seeing and loving the game. "Mom," he said, his voice carrying that precise tone that Blake had mocked but Larry had celebrated. "Did you know that Larry Bird once said that basketball is a game of patterns? That's how I see it too, like a beautiful equation that keeps changing but always makes sense." Sophia watched her son return to his beloved basketball cards, but something was different now. Instead of using them as a retreat from the world, he was eager to share their stories, encouraged by how Larry Bird had understood and valued his way of expressing his passion. The next morning, Jasper Boone arrived at the Tates' house with an invitation that would change everything. Larry Bird wanted to meet Liam, not for publicity or show, but for a real conversation about basketball, one expert to another. "You see," Larry explained to reporters who'd caught wind of the meeting, "when I heard Liam break down that '84 finals game, he wasn't just reciting stats. He was seeing the game the way a coach sees it, understanding patterns and strategies that most fans never notice. That's not disability, that's gift." The meeting was set for the Pacers' practice facility, away from media circus. When Liam walked in, his eyes immediately went to the court, his mind already calculating angles and distances. Larry Bird, sitting on the bleachers with a basketball in his hands, recognized that look, the look of someone who saw the game in its purest form. "I hear you know a thing or two about basketball," Larry said, his voice carrying that familiar Indiana drawl. "How about you tell me what you see when you look at this court?" What followed was a conversation that those present would never forget. Liam, encouraged by Larry's genuine interest, began explaining how he visualized plays unfolding, how he could see statistical patterns in player movements, how every game told a story through numbers and positions. "It's like music," Liam explained, his hands moving as he described plays. "Every player has their rhythm, their tempo. When they work together, it's like a symphony. That's why your games with Magic Johnson were so special, two different rhythms creating something perfect." Larry listened, occasionally nodding, sometimes asking questions that showed he understood exactly what Liam was describing. For everyone watching, it was a masterclass in both basketball and human connection. Blake Summers had been invited to witness the meeting, not for his show, but for his own education. Watching Liam break down classic plays, seeing Larry Bird lean forward with genuine interest, the radio host began to understand what real basketball commentary could be. "You know what makes basketball beautiful?" Larry asked, bouncing the ball to Liam. "It's not just about who's the strongest or the fastest. It's about seeing things others don't see, understanding the game in your own way. Some people see it through statistics, some through stories, some through strategy. But there's no wrong way to love this game." The impact rippled beyond that practice facility. Other NBA legends began reaching out, sharing their own stories of facing judgment, of being told they didn't fit the mold. Magic Johnson called the radio station to commend Larry's stance and share his own experiences with promoting inclusivity in sports. But the real transformation was happening in smaller, more personal ways. Local basketball leagues started creating inclusive programs, ensuring that everyone who loved the game had a chance to participate in their own way. The Pacers organization announced a new initiative to make games more accessible for fans with sensory sensitivities. Sophia watched her son flourish in ways she hadn't dared to hope for. Liam's unique understanding of basketball wasn't just being tolerated, it was being celebrated. Other kids at school, who had once kept their distance, now sought him out for his insights into the game. Owen Barrett saw an opportunity for real change at his station. With input from advocacy organizations and sports professionals, they began developing a new segment focused on different perspectives on basketball, with Liam invited to be a regular contributor. "Basketball isn't just a game," Larry told Owen during the planning meeting. "It's a language. And just like any language, it can be spoken in different ways. Sometimes the ones who speak it differently are the ones who help us see it in new and better ways." Blake Summers found himself on an unexpected journey of learning and growth. The host, who had once mocked a different way of expressing love for the game, was now actively working to make his show more inclusive, to celebrate rather than ridicule different perspectives. "You know what I learned from all this?" Blake admitted on air a week after the incident. "I learned that being a sports commentator isn't just about knowing the game, it's about respecting everyone who loves it, no matter how they show that love." The story reached beyond sports media. Educational institutions began using it as an example of how to promote inclusivity and understanding. Mental health professionals pointed to it as a powerful demonstration of how validation and respect can transform lives. Larry Bird, true to his character, deflected praise for his intervention. "I just did what anyone who loves basketball should do," he said. "This game gives us a chance to bring people together, to lift each other up. If we're not doing that, we're missing the whole point." And there you have it, friends. Sometimes the most powerful lessons in sports have nothing to do with scoring points or winning games. Have you ever seen someone's unique perspective change the way you understand something you love? Share your stories in the comments below. Remember, the greatest champions aren't always the ones who score the most points. Sometimes they're the ones who help others find their voice, who stand up for those who see the world differently, who remind us that there's no wrong way to love what you love. Stay tuned, because this story isn't over yet. What began as a moment of ignorance is about to become a movement of understanding, proving that sometimes the most important victories in sports are the ones that change hearts and minds. 1 year after Larry Bird stepped into that radio station to defend a young fan, the ripple effects of that morning had grown into waves of change that transformed not just a community, but the way people thought about sports, inclusion, and understanding. The scene at Bankers Life Fieldhouse was electric. The Indiana Pacers were hosting their first ever Basketball for All night, an initiative that had grown from the seeds of that fateful radio show incident. In the announcer's booth, a familiar voice was calling the game, but Blake Summers sounded different now. His commentary was thoughtful, inclusive, focused on celebrating the many ways people connect with the sport. Liam Hawkins sat courtside, wearing a custom Pacers jersey with both his name and Larry Bird's number. Next to him, Larry himself leaned in occasionally to share observations about the game. But this wasn't just a special treat for one young fan. Liam was there as a working member of the broadcast team. And now, Blake's voice carried across the arena. Let's go to our special analyst Liam Hawkins for a breakdown of that last play's statistical significance. Sophia Tate watched from nearby as her son lifted the microphone with confident hands. The nervous teenager who had once been mocked for his robot voice was now celebrated for his unique perspective on the game. His precise, detailed analysis had become a favorite feature among serious basketball fans. "If you look at the positioning of the players," Liam began, his distinctive voice clear and strong, "you'll notice a pattern similar to the one Larry Bird used in Game 6 of the 1986 Finals. The spacing creates a 68.3% probability of success, particularly when accounting for the defensive alignment." Larry Bird nodded approvingly. Over the past year, he had become more than just Liam's defender. He had become his mentor, recognizing in the young man's statistical insight a valuable new way of understanding the game they both loved. Owen Barrett, watching from the owner's box, reflected on how much had changed at WKSP Sports Radio. What started as a crisis had evolved into an opportunity. Their new inclusive sports programming had not only won awards but had attracted a broader, more diverse audience than ever before. The Different Ways to Love the Game initiative, sparked by Larry Bird's intervention, had spread to sports organizations across the country. Basketball camps now included specialized programs for children on the autism spectrum, recognizing that their unique way of seeing patterns and processing information could bring valuable insights to the sport. Blake Summers had undergone perhaps the most remarkable transformation. The host who had once mocked difference had become one of its strongest advocates. His morning show now regularly featured diverse voices sharing their perspectives on sports, proving that understanding basketball, or any passion, couldn't be limited to one way of thinking or expressing. "You know what I learned?" Blake shared during a special segment marking the 1-year anniversary of the incident. I learned that being a sports commentator isn't just about analyzing games. It's about understanding that every fan, every player, every person who loves this sport brings something valuable to it. But the most significant changes weren't happening in the broadcast booth or on the professional level. They were taking place in school gyms and playground courts across the city. Kids who might have once been excluded from sports because they saw or expressed things differently were finding their place in the game. Jasper Boone had helped establish a scholarship program named in honor of Liam for students who demonstrated unique approaches to understanding and analyzing sports. Sometimes, he explained at the launch ceremony, the most valuable players aren't the ones on the court, they're the ones who help us see the game in new ways. Larry Bird's involvement hadn't stopped with that first intervention. He had become a quiet but powerful advocate for inclusion in sports, using his legendary status to open doors and change minds. Basketball taught me a lot about life, he often said, but Liam taught me even more about how many ways there are to understand and love this game. The Pacers organization had embraced the movement fully. They now employed several analysts on the autism spectrum, recognizing that their ability to spot patterns and process statistical information brought valuable insights to team strategy. The NBA itself had taken notice, implementing similar initiatives across the league. On this special night, during halftime, Larry Bird took center court to make an announcement. The Pacers were establishing the Many Ways to Play foundation dedicated to making basketball accessible and welcoming to everyone, regardless of how they experienced or expressed their love for the game. You see, Larry addressed the crowd, his Indiana drawl carrying the weight of wisdom. Basketball isn't just about what happens on the court. It's about community. It's about understanding. It's about recognizing that everyone who loves this game has something valuable to contribute to it. Liam's statistical analysis had become so respected that college basketball programs were beginning to adopt his methodologies. The robot voice that had once drawn mockery was now recognized as the voice of precision and insight, bringing a new dimension to basketball analysis. Sophia had seen her son grow from a teenager who retreated into statistics for comfort into a young man who used those same statistics to connect with others. The numbers were always his way of expressing love for the game, she explained to a reporter. Now, thanks to Larry Bird and everyone who stood up for him, the world finally understands that. The evening ended with a special ceremony, but not one focused on championships or records. Instead, it celebrated the many ways people connect with and contribute to the sport. From traditional players to statistical analysts, from fans who expressed their passion quietly to those who showed it loudly, all were recognized as vital parts of the basketball community. You know what makes basketball great? Larry Bird asked during the closing ceremony. It's not just the scores or the stats or the championships. It's the way it brings people together, the way it gives everyone a chance to belong. Sometimes it takes someone who sees the game differently to help us all see it better. Blake Summers, who had once mocked what he didn't understand, now ended every show with a new signature line. Remember, there's no wrong way to love the game, there are just different ways to make it better. And there you have it, friends. A story that began with ignorance and mockery transformed into a movement of understanding and inclusion. Have you ever had your perspective changed about something you thought you understood? Has someone's different way of seeing things ever opened your eyes to new possibilities? Share your stories in the comments below. Remember, true greatness in sports and in life isn't just about accepting differences, it's about recognizing that those differences make us all better. Sometimes the most valuable players in any game are the ones who help us see it in a whole new way. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about the moments that remind us why sports have the power to change not just games, but hearts and minds. Because in the end, the greatest victories aren't just counted on scoreboards, they're measured in the lives we touch and the understanding we create.